Okay, so one of the things that I find really fascinating about moving to Toronto, I've been here last year and a half or so, is that every time I go out to a social event, like half the party, it's people who are working in the tech sector, and almost all of them repurposed from a different career. But I don't know, I'm hearing all about layoffs these days, and I'm kind of curious how many of them are going to have jobs going forward.
I actually don't know how many people have really been laid off. But maybe there's somebody that we can ask here. Alexa?
How many people in the tech sector have lost their jobs in the last 6 months?
From Theatre.com, the information tech sector lost 4,000 jobs.
That doesn't seem right.
I'm going to ask a little bit more of a specific question. Alexa, how many people at Amazon have been laid off in the last 6 months?
From businesstoday.in, globally Amazon has laid off more than 18,000 employees.
Wow.
That's a lot more.
18,000 is a lot more.
Alexa, how many people have you laid off personally?
I don't know that one.
Very coy.
Hey, I'm Kieran Outsorn. Andrew Chang is away today, but the show's still here. This is about that. It's a show where we're all about explaining and expanding on the news. And today, we're going to be exploring why so many of the world's biggest tech companies are downsizing right now, gutting their teams, laying off people by the thousands.
So I just got off of a company call and was informed that I was let go, along with 11,000 other employees at Meta.
I'm so hurt right now. I see this happen all the time. I just didn't think it would happen to me, but I just got laid off.
If you're going through this right now, I'm in the same boat as you, so sending lots of love and light, and we'll get through this. We will get through this. That's life right now.
And it's not just layoffs. A new poll found that half of Canadian workers are going to be looking for a new job in 2023, hoping to find better pay and more flexibility. So whether it's because of layoffs or you're just looking for a change, how do you go about finding a new job? Well, later on the show, we're going to hear from Lauren Bird as she connects with a career coach to take us through that process. But first, check this out. According to a tech layoff tracking site, there have been more than 154,000 tech layoffs in 2022. And that trend is going to be continuing, and it's definitely continued into this year already. We've already seen 38,000 layoffs in the tech sector, and there is no sign of that slowing down. Now, all those cuts mean that there are now thousands of tech workers out there who are looking for work. And they might not have the same kind of options that they used to during the boom times. Now, take a look at this list. These are companies that you probably recognize or have heard about before. They're the biggest and most successful tech companies in the world. And these numbers on the far side here, this represents the number of layoffs that they've had since the pandemic. So looking at this, Amazon, 18,000 people laid off. Alphabet, that's Google's parent company, 12,000. Meta, that's Facebook's parent company, 11,000. And Microsoft, just in this last week, announced that 10,000 people have been laid off. Now, that's one way to think about this, is the total number of staff who have gone. But another way that we can think about this as well is thinking about the percentage of the total workforce that's gone. For a company like Uber, they've laid off 25% of their total workforce. Bookings.com, also a quarter of their workforce gone. And for Twitter, a whopping 50% of their staff are gone now. These are some big numbers, and they have some reverberations throughout the system. Now we're thinking these companies, they have all sorts of company-specific reasons for letting staff go. Now, Twitter might be an easy example. Could be their astronomical growth, a complete lack of profitability, or maybe it's Elon Musk's takeover. All of these things played a role in the cutbacks that they're experiencing now. But there's also a common thread running through all of these different layoffs, and that's what we're going to try to figure out and talk about right now. All right, joining us to help make sense of all this is Josh O'Kane. He's a tech reporter with the Globe and Mail. Josh, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Kieran.
Okay, so maybe you can start off and you can give us the broad context of these layoffs. What's the landscape right now?
Okay, so at the beginning of the pandemic, there was this sort of broad societal thought, which was tech is going to save us. Digital services are going to save us. People are searching a lot more on Google. They're buying more on Amazon. They're buying more at small businesses powered by Shopify. They're spending a lot more time on Facebook. You can't go anywhere. You can't see people. So all these companies have a lot more revenue, so they start hiring a lot of people. But then in November 2021, you probably remember around that time, everyone's like, there's a supply chain crunch. And what happens with the supply chain crunch? Things get more expensive. People start getting worried about inflation. When that happens long enough, people start worrying about, are central banks going to raise interest rates, which makes it harder to borrow money, which means tech companies, which have often depended, two things happen. Tech companies that are dependent on sort of borrowed money, that becomes more expensive for them to do.
Right.
And then consumers are spending less, which means that investors kind of pull out of certain stocks in the marketplace. And so as a result, tech stocks started falling. So public companies started having just sort of less market capitalizations. And so they started getting a little bit more fearful of what their spending was going to be. And then a few months after that, like startup style companies, smaller, younger companies started realizing, oh, venture capitalists are a lot more reluctant to invest in us. What are we supposed to do now? Because we just had a 13-year-long party where money was cheap to get. Everyone was spending on tech and thinking tech was going to save the world. Now suddenly there's restraint in the entire sector.
From the headquarters of Amazon to the offices of Microsoft, for tech workers, 2023 is off to a rocky start.
Google parent company Alphabet is the latest tech giant to slash its workforce, announcing cuts today of 6%.
Okay, so you've outlined some of these elements, the sort of chain reaction that's happening here. And I'm curious because when I look at these layoffs, it really feels like a domino effect, one after another. And so, you've identified some of these elements, but is there a reason that it's all happening right now? Like earlier this week, or last week, Microsoft says they're laying off, and then you hear from Alphabet, and it's like one after another. So why right now?
So this is actually probably the third wave of layoffs that we've seen. So the younger startups that were depending on venture capital, they were realizing we might not get another $100 million from our investors, which means they have to take the previous $50 million and make it last another year or two.
Oh no, not just $50 million.
I know. So we're talking like last June or so, May and June, that was when you started seeing these earlier stage companies making layoffs. But then by the fall, people were starting to realize, high interest rates are here to stay. Consumer spending may be down for a while. And as a result, it's like, oh, we are going to the whole sector is going to have to do more with less. So you heard back in the fall, you heard of Amazon announcing, I believe, it was around 11,000 at the time. That's since gone up to 18,000. Meta/Facebook, that had another 10 or 11,000 layoffs back in the fall. And then just this month, Amazon boosted up to that 18,000 that I said to you. This is just sort of, the entire sector is now trying to do less with more.
Right.
And it's sort of kind of coming down to earth after the free spending mania within the sector that happened at the beginning of the pandemic when we all thought these companies were going to save the world.
So we're talking about some of the biggest, the most successful companies here. And these are the ones that are going through these massive layoffs. Are we expecting to, for another shoe to drop? Like, are we going to hear about more layoffs from them? Or is there other companies that this will potentially, spread to?
So there's a couple of things that are happening. One is I actually was speaking to a professor earlier this week who basically said a lot of these layoffs from the biggest companies are like a social contagion. One company says, I'm going to cut costs, and so that's what investors start to expect. And so all these other executives are like, well, we now have to cut costs, which means cutting people, which means thousands of people lose their jobs. So that is part of how the domino effect has been working with the big tech companies, according to this expert that I've been speaking with. And then if you look at what's going to happen next, those earlier stage startups are running out of money now. And a lot of people in the tech press in particular, my colleagues and I have been talking about, we're watching for bankruptcies. And we're watching for these smallest tech companies, not the smallest, but sort of the companies that may not have had a profit yet, that were really hoping to just get another round of venture capital to really try something new and interesting and eventually make it profitable. They're going to run out of money, and there could very well, a lot of companies that are sort of at that stage could be sold off in a fire sale.
Right.
And what's going to happen then? Who's going to want to buy those? The companies that have a little bit of money left, which are going to be the big tech giants. And so there's one of the possibilities we're going to see over the course of this year is a more economic power concentrated in some of the biggest companies that we already have.
So thinking of this in the context of cycles, the economic cycle that we're going through, I mean, obviously tech isn't going to be going anywhere anytime soon. We're going to be seeing it for a minute. So are we thinking that we're going to see a rebound in terms of hiring, or is this wave of layoffs, is this actually the correction and we're going to land more where we should?
I think because it is a cycle, I think we're a couple of things. One is, I don't think we're at the bottom yet. I think we're probably going to see other waves. This is when we're going to see, these companies being sold off for super cheap and the consolidation that you're going to see in the kind of recession we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Here's some other interesting things that could happen. What happened when BlackBerry, which was formerly known as Research in Motion, didn't shut down, but it pivoted and it sort of moved away from smartphones about a decade ago. Waterloo, which was already kind of a tech hub, a lot of former BlackBerry employees went off and they started their own companies.
Right.
And what that did is help seed an ecosystem. And so what you could see among these tens of thousands of people, actually more than 150,000 total around the world already, is more people starting their own startups. Another thing that could happen is this talent that is sort of concentrated in one sector. People who are really smart at AI, people who are really smart at cybersecurity, and or perhaps even designing chips. These people could wind up going to other sectors, education or healthcare, or even perhaps the government, and actually sort of spreading this wealth of knowledge around other parts of the economy. There have been some studies suggesting that job postings outside of tech companies for tech jobs are not actually falling all that much. And so there are opportunities. Now that means you're not going to be able to, go home at the Thanksgiving table and say, yes, I'm the son that works for Facebook, or I'm the daughter that works for Alphabet. But it could mean that they still have good, well-paying jobs, and they're actually sort of spreading this knowledge around the economy.
Okay, I find that a really fascinating element of this, thinking about all these highly skilled folks who are now going to basically be out in the market looking for work and can land in different areas. Have you talked to anyone, any experts or any people who have talked about, giving an idea of what that might look like or where that might land?
It's hard to tell because there's no set length for a cycle like this.
Sure.
I have talked to experts who've told me exactly what I just told you, which is that there could very well be a spreading around of knowledge. It could be 4 or 5 years before we start seeing things turn back up. It could be 10 years. It could be 2 years. It is hard to tell because there's only been one major pandemic in the Western world since the digital era began, to be able to sort of help to understand how something like that could change this whole sector of the economy and these hundreds of thousands of jobs. So it's hard to tell. But there's going to be a lot more pain. That's just simply where the market appears to be headed from an evidence point of view. But there are a lot of opportunities for the people who have been laid off. They just might look a little bit less flashy, at least for the time being.
Great. Well, okay, so this is super fascinating. I appreciate you coming in to help break it down for us and give us a bit of a clearer picture of what's happening next, because sometimes, you can get a little bit confused or overwhelmed by all the headlines. So Josh, thanks so much for coming in.
Happy to help, Karen. Thanks.
All right, after the break, our producer Lauren Bird is going to be sitting down with a career coach to chat about how you can get through a layoff. So we'll be back in just a moment.
Hey, I'm Lauren Bird. I'm a producer with About That. And if you've ever been laid off, or you know anyone who's ever been laid off, then you know it can be an incredibly challenging time. It's challenging emotionally, it's challenging mentally. You have to live with a lot of uncertainty. So that's why today I am on my way to a cafe in downtown Toronto where I'm meeting up with Kadine Cooper. She is a career transition counselor, and I want to ask her how she helps people get through this time.
So if someone comes to you and they say, I've been laid off, where do you begin with them?
Their emotions. I want to do an emotion check. I want to do a mindset check. I want to make sure that they're good and ready to project themselves as a top talent that they are, because there's no point in putting yourself out there if you're not ready. And so you've been laid off, you've been maybe caught off guard by this. So take maybe a time, take maybe a week or two and get all your tools together. So let's look at your resume. Let's look at your LinkedIn profile. Let's look at what the market is going to say about you before you even penetrate the market. So getting all those pieces, to ensure that there are clear, concise, and consistent messages as to who you are as a professional is key.
What do those messages need to be then?
So who are you? Are you a subject matter expert? I want to know everything that you've done in your career, because then we can cherry pick the transferable skills that might be relevant to today's market or relevant to the industry or the organization that you're trying to tap into, right? So once we have that, then we can start building your resume with all your accomplishments, right? All the things that you've done, because sometimes we forget.
So how is it getting people to that point of reinventing? Is it reinventing?
I wouldn't say that it's reinventing. It's more reassessing, doing some self-reflection to figure out, okay, so this is what I've been doing maybe for 5 years. Do I want to continue doing this? Or do I want to pivot and do something different? Do I have a skills gap that the market is requiring right now? Do I need to maybe go back and get certified or re-educate myself? So it's during that time of self-assessment that you can figure out, what do I need to do now?
And what do you find people learn in that self-assessment? Do you need to be considering leaving your sector? What are the things that you need to consider?
Yeah, that could be one of them, right? So maybe you've been in pharmaceutical. Maybe now you want to go into financial, right? Maybe you want to go into small business. Do you want to stay maybe in a larger corporation, or do you want to go down to a mid-size or a startup? Maybe you want to get into consulting. Like, that's what I'm saying. When you have that opportunity, you, again, use it as a gift. I know that's hard to kind of digest for some people. I've been laid off, but consider this a gift to take a step back and figure out, okay, what do I want now, right?
Is it hard though? I'm sure for some people it might be hard to think of it as a gift. You know, like the economy is really rough right now. How accepting are people of that message when it's...
Well, not so much in the beginning. But I think once I start putting them through certain assessments, they realize the benefit of it, because it jogs their memory as to, oh yeah, I did do this, or you know what, I really don't want to do that moving forward. Now I have a choice. So it takes a little bit of finessing to get them on board, but eventually they come around, and then we work on their strategic job search plan, right? Their networking plan.
And so is that where you start with your network?
Yeah, start with your internal network. Take care of the low-hanging fruits. Who do you know? And people work with or hire people that they know, like, and trust. So who can speak to your credibility better than people that you either know in the industry, and then maybe even expand it out further?
There's also like rebuilding your resume. So how do you take someone through that process?
So I personally like to think that everyone should have 3 different versions.
3 different versions of their resume?
3 different versions of their resume. I know, it sounds like a lot, but there's a method to my madness.
I'm trusting you.
So the first resume is like your brain download. That's everything and anything that you've done from the time that you started your professional career to present day. Because from that, we can use it to cherry pick the transferable skills that are relevant to the job market today, the industry, and your experience. So the second resume is one that's applicant tracking friendly. We live in a digital world right now, so everything is online, right? Unless you've got a connection or a referral. So with the second resume, you want to ensure that the transferable skills are there and the key action and buzzwords are there that are relevant to the industry or the job market. And then the third resume is one that's cosmetic friendly looking. So if I was to say, Lauren, send your resume to Michelle. You know, that resume, when she opens her inbox, she's going to be like, oh my God, this is exactly what I'm looking for. It looks polished. You could have borders, fancy logos, icons on it. It just looks like you've put in the time to put together.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'll show you my resume. Okay. And if I could just get your, like, what you think of it.
I put my glasses on.
If my persona comes through at all, or if anything comes through.
So first thing that I would say that you're missing is an executive or professional summary.
Right.
Who is Lauren? You've just jumped right into your experience.
I did.
Right? So tell me, who is Lauren? How many years of experience does Lauren have? Who has Lauren served?
Yeah, see, to me, I would say, like, it's obvious, right, when I go down.
It's obvious when you go down, but I like a little starting point. Give me like a brief synopsis of who you are, right? And then I feel like people eat humble pie when they're doing their resume. They want to kind of concise it, but you've done more than 2 bullet points in your current role.
How nitty gritty do you need to get with those sorts of things? Because, yeah, I don't think I do that there. I don't get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, but you put a lot of detail into these roles here. There's more information here. So I would hope and expect that you're progressing, right? That you're evolving in your career. So we need to show that evolution.
Okay, well, thank you. And I will use this for my next job search. So when we talk about like making that persona kind of shine through, or I think you mentioned branding, like how you brand yourself. Like, how do you really start to do that?
LinkedIn is the perfect place to do that. That's your digital footprint. So you want to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date. Again, show some personality. Tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you serve, even your tagline. Get creative with it. Tell me all the things that you've done, even the things that you would like to be doing.
How do you know if you're the right fit for a place?
Look at your values. What do you value? What's important to you? And does this company or organization align with your values? So I always say to my clients, you're the interviewee and you're also the interviewer. So you need to be listening out for things and checking to see, okay, does this company align with my morals, my values? What is it that intrigues me to want to work for them? Is it their product? Is it their service? Is it their missions? There has to be something that's attracting you to the organization.
What else is critically important for someone to look at?
How are you showing up? How are you showing up as a subject matter expert or the go-to person in your industry? Right? That's really important. One of the things that I love about LinkedIn is you can post information on there. So let's say you were a storyteller. Okay, so I need to see blogs, I need to see stories and things that you've written so that I can get your writing style, so I can know, what do you like to write about?
So you need to be visible.
You need to be visible, especially now.
Yeah.
Because people are looking for your differentiator. What makes you unique? What makes you special? And you have to know that. You have to be confident enough to know that and to be able to articulate that as well.
Well, and I think that's really hard because it can be hard to kind of distill that down.
One of the exercises that I have my clients do as well is go back to some old performance reviews. What were the nice things that were said about you? What were they viewed as your strengths? So what did your employer or your manager say your strengths were? And then use that to articulate moving forward. Ask even friends and family members, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think I'm known for? Right? And then you can kind of play off of that.
And are there things that you can do, to level up, to get yourself to that point if you're not quite where you want to be right now?
One of the things that I wish I had and discovered earlier in my career is a mentor. Get a mentor, get a coach, get someone who can kind of take you under their wing and guide you on the career trajectory that you want for yourself, right? Work with someone who you admire, that you aspire to be and grow with, right?
How do you do that? Because you just ask.
Yeah,
right?
if there's someone out there that you admire, you'd be surprised how open and receptive people are.
So I think with everything happening, with everything going on, the layoffs that we see, there is a lot of fear out there. There can be it makes you nervous. What would you tell people about sort of trying to dispel that fear or even channeling it?
Establish habits and rituals early. So continue getting up early in the morning. Continue putting on makeup. Getting dressed up. So because you look good, you feel good. You will go through, there's many different emotions that you'll go through, and fear is definitely one of them. But find someone that you can talk to about that fear.
Kadine Cooper, thank you so much. This has been wonderful to chat.
Thanks for the questions.
Welcome back. Now, Lauren, I know we started off this episode talking to Alexa about, she's lit up. She's here with us, always listening.
Yeah.
But we were chatting about, some of the issues that were going on. We had some questions for her. And now that we've done some reporting, I know you have another question maybe to wrap up the show.
Yeah. Alexa, what does the future hold for tech workers who have been laid off?
From fastcompany.com. According to a study conducted by ZipRecruiter, 37% of laid-off tech workers are back to work in under a month, and another 42% find another job within 3.
Okay.
Wow.
So I actually find that interesting because that lines up with maybe one of the most interesting pieces of information that I got from my conversation with Josh. He was saying that obviously, although this is a very difficult time for a lot of tech workers, going through layoffs, never easy, and there's tens of thousands of people who are out of work around the world, there's also some silver linings. First, in that these are highly skilled people, and as they move out of potentially the tech sector and into other areas, they're going to be moving into different industries, and that's going to potentially move those industries forward as well. There's going to be a lot of development happening there. And then, there's always the possibility that people will start their own businesses. And, that kind of innovation can always be a positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that ties into what Kadine Cooper told me, She said you can take a step back, reassess, reevaluate, and that there is that silver lining there usually. It might be a hard pill to swallow at first, but usually people end up getting through it. And, it's a strong job market out there right now.
Right.
So there's probably a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, well, hopefully the job market stays strong going forward. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, while there are some challenges, there are also some potential positive outcomes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's it for us today here. Join us tomorrow for more about that.